Hello, everybody, and welcome to First Ring Daily. I am Brad. He's Paul, and
Fall off the chair.
I almost fell off the chair. We were getting things off with a bang, and not like the boom on stage, though, Paul.
Boy, the booyah.
The booyah. Yeah, 0 for 2 for the kicking this off. But we are live here at Ignite. You can see it behind us. There's actually a pretty large crowd here. A bunch of people watching in on YouTube, and as always, we appreciate you guys coming to hang out with us. Paul, they kind of loaded the deck today. There were announcements, everything ranging from Windows to Azure to Dynamics, which I know you were very excited about. Modular apps and Dynamics, Paul. How does that make you feel?
I think I blacked out during that part of the keynote, actually.
Yeah, they're also bringing AI to Dynamics 365, just a bunch of things. But one of the things that jumped out in my mind, and I'm curious to get your opinion on this, Paul, is we're really actually seeing for the first time Microsoft is starting to push Windows 10 S into the enterprise. Correct me if I'm wrong, it was only education up to this event.
Well, not really. I mean, officially, it was announced at an education event, but they always intended to get this out to business users and
Sure.
consumers too. So I was kind of curious at that event that they didn't push harder on the enterprise stuff, and I
Right.
think now we're seeing why. Basically, they're integrating it with Microsoft 365. There's some weird things going around a new kind of version of Windows S, and we finally see the first third-party PCs
Yep.
based on Windows 10 S that are aimed at the business market.
Yeah, and interesting because Microsoft wouldn't be Microsoft without doing this to us. So they pre-briefed us on a lot of this information. We had all the blogs and all that stuff. And yet when they published their Windows 10 S blog today, they called it Windows 10 Enterprise with S mode.
Right.
So so what we don't know is this another new SKU of Windows, or is this a feature inside of Windows that you can just turn on?
Yep. So what I think it is basically a new SKU of Windows, but it is what it sounds like, Windows
Yeah.
10 Enterprise in S mode, meaning how do I say this? To Enterprise Edition, nope, that's not how I say this. It is, it is to Enterprise Edition what Windows 10 S is to Pro, which is basically the same operating system minus the ability to run desktop apps and a few other things, the command line restrictions and so forth.
Right. And this is the perfect Microsoft thing to do to us because
Yep.
we come into these events, what we think is well educated, right? We read all this stuff up. I had a bunch of posts written, and then they drop S mode, and immediately the questions come up. It's like, hey, Barrett, we have Windows 10 Enterprise deployed. Can I turn that machine into a Windows 10 Enterprise S mode device?
Yeah, I think the answer to that question is yes, actually. But in this case, I have to say, this part of it was they were really light on the details. We had another part of the keynote announcements that they literally redacted. It said quantum computing redacted, and then they went to the next thing. In the case of Windows 10 S, we got a little bit of information.
Right.
We knew that there were going to be a few PC makers doing it, $275 and up, and part of Microsoft 365, a new version of Microsoft 365, the F1 SKU there. But when the actual press release or the new blog post came out, there were additional PC makers in the list. There were different price points. We saw some of the machines, which we had asked for and they wouldn't show us before.
Yep.
And there was this S mode thing, which to me still sounds like a Samsung thing, but it's also new information.
S mode with S Pen, S Face, Bixby. So I guess the real question becomes, Microsoft is pitching this for what they call first line workers. A lot of us get first line and front line workers.
Yep.
It's sort of like the edge user, the people that are working in retail, the people working, the first line. Do you see this? The struggle I have with this is what's going to be the big difference between Windows 10 S, this enterprise thing, and then a good IT pro who can manage Windows 10 Enterprise extremely well and lock everything down from that type of a scenario.
Desktop apps. I mean, I think it's funny because when I hear first line worker, and if you look at their description of it, I sort of imagine something a little broader than that. It's the people who are your brand to customers, the people you interact with first at the company. Yes. And actually what you said is correct though. You think about a retail situation, it's the person who works at the store that you walk up to and say, hi, I'd like this kind of a shirt, and they can help you or they can't, and they're your first interaction. So those types of people don't really have deep technological needs at work, right? They probably are running either a kiosk or a kiosk-like system. And actually, you could make the argument that Windows 10 S is appropriate for those kinds of environments. Yeah. So I sort of think of this as baby steps into the enterprise because those businesses are big businesses. They're literally enterprises, but they're not enterprises like we think about them traditionally in the form of a bunch of IT worker types. They have first line, I still have a hard time with this term, first line, workers who deal with the public. So Actually, it does make some sense, right?
Yeah.
And that was a question back in May when they first announced Windows 10s. You know, who is the audience that's appropriate for this system, and what scenarios? How does that work in a work situation? And now we're starting to see the beginning of that.
Yeah, so this is one of those stories that is still definitely unfolding, and I'm going to be very curious to see once this really gets out into the field how people are actually reacting to Windows 10s for the corporate world. We know the education story, we know the Surface Laptop story. What we don't know is actually, I would love to know people who have actually bought a Surface Laptop, if you're still on S, or if you took advantage of that free upgrade offer to proper
Are you
Windows.
literally looking for a show of hands?
Well, I suspect I don't need to ask too many people to see how many stayed.
Yeah.
But
the other thing that I think is actually kind of interesting here is that the Windows 10s PCs that were in Surface Laptop that were announced in May are by and large tiny little boxy student type laptops that are kind of Chromebook competitors. So they're not really interesting to most people. The computers that were announced today are actually 14-inch devices, actually all of them. There are a variety of PC makers, I think Acer, HP, Lenovo, and I believe Fujitsu, although we didn't see the Fujitsu PC.
Yeah.
These are actually decent looking computers.
Sure.
And they're going to span a variety of price points. So they start at 275, but 350, they're going to go higher than that because you can get i3, i5, i7 processors in some of them. So this is sort of what I was looking for in the very beginning, which was I don't want the dumpy little educational device, obviously. Plus, I have huge hands; I can't type on that.
We know that.
But you know, Surface Laptop is a fine machine. It's great, but it starts at $999. It really starts at $1299 for a decently spec system. It's expensive, and so I think these machines are going to fit right into the middle of the price point. So I think that's important too.
Yeah. So the outstanding question, I know we talked about this back when Windows 10s launched. Do you still see or not see Windows 10s as a Chromebook competitor?
Well, yeah. I mean, it has always been that, and it probably always will be that. But it's not. It's never always been just that, right? And so there are different classes of users that have different needs than say what a Chromebook might provide, but might still want some of those benefits. You know, the security, the reliability, the manageability on the part of IT pros.
Yeah.
And the consistency over time, which I think is actually the big promise here. You know, that these machines hopefully won't suffer from Windows rot over time. They won't degrade in performance or reliability over time, and that's kind of a big deal. I do think as the Windows Store market matures that there might be a class of user who could get away with using just those apps and take advantage of that additional benefit.
No, actually, as I'm sitting here doing this podcast, I have 4 of the 5 apps that are open are actually Store apps. The only one that's not is Chrome. So
I would never have admitted that publicly. But yeah, he's right. As I look at my more adult PC, I see that most of my apps are in fact native Win32 apps because I am
stuck in the past.
I need a full-featured application. You know?
He's the on-premises.
Wow.
I'm the Azure.
Wow. I prefer to think of myself as a hybrid solution, but I see what you're saying.
Anyways, moving on. Other things that Microsoft announced today, they made some big updates to Microsoft 365, which is sort of an all-encompassing solution. If you hate subscriptions, sign up for Microsoft 365 because it has a little bit of everything. Yep. There's a new education SKU.
That's right.
And a new first line. I'm going to say front line, mostly because it's also a flea and tick medication for animals.
Awesome. That's okay. That's what that was.
Yeah. So those 2 new SKUs are out. If that is your cup of tea. They didn't give us pricing. At least I haven't seen pricing.
No, they never give pricing the first time they announce something like this. So same thing, Office 365 for business and for enterprise, pricing wasn't there day one. But I assume the first line, I really do have a problem with that. The first line version, I would assume, is going to be less expensive than business. I think that's the point.
I think that's
not quite kiosk mode, but maybe kiosk mode plus. And I would imagine education likewise will be less expensive than enterprise.
Yep.
But a similar feature set.
And those 2 SKUs are actually very, very similar. I believe that one of the primary differences is that education gets Minecraft for education.
That's right.
In that bundle as well.
That's right.
And we know how much you like Minecraft.
I do like Minecraft.
We do. Paul, curious, have you ever heard the phrase Bing for business before?
If I understand what you're shooting for, which is some form of accolade because you wrote about it first, the answer is no. I don't remember that.
No. Anyways, Bing for Business was announced. I wrote about this last week, and really, it's exactly what you don't think it is.
Right.
No, there's no way to make money from this, from what people were initially speculating. What it allows you to do is, if you are a large company, and let's just say you have a payroll website, you can now inject that into Bing search results inside of your own company in a well-managed environment, and people only inside of your org can actually search for that. They showed off a bunch of demonstrations. To be honest, actually, after seeing it in person, I can see how this is actually beneficial, because we're a very small company, and I could not for the life of you tell you what the URL is to our payroll processing.
Right. The phrase Bing for Business sounds ludicrous when you first hear it. And then because I sort of imagine, it's like enterprise search with ads.
Yes.
That is not what it is. And it is what you described. You're basically integrating internal processes into search results in the web browser. It's actually pretty incredible. And if you saw the demos they provided today on stage, it was actually really nice. And it's part of a kind of a wave of what I think of as natural computing initiatives from Microsoft.
Sure.
It ties into the ambient devices thing, which we'll get to in a moment. But it's basically a way for a person to use something that in the past would have required knowledge about where to look, what tool to use, how to use it, and now you can just use simple search queries to get what you want.
Yeah.
Smart.
One of the things I actually really like that they showed off very briefly is that in those search results, you could go over and kind of see the chain of command, and you could actually figure out where that individual resided in the org chart. And I know for some people who have never really worked in enterprise, and be like, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that you can actually see how high up they are. If it's like a VP, you can't swing a dead cat in a bank and not hit a VP, right?
Sure.
But in Microsoft or some other companies, a VP is a very prestigious title. So it helps you gauge where that person is in the org chart to know, like, okay, right, is this going to be like a casual meeting, or should I be like, really polished, wear the suit that day type thing.
Right.
To me, that's actually a pretty big deal, and hats off for Microsoft for actually trying to put this into a place that any user can get just through the tips of their fingers very quickly.
Yeah.
So.
The org chart at our company is like a sine wave. So in some ways, you're more important than I am, and in some ways,
right.
I'm way more important than you are.
Debatable.
Yeah.
A small little primer. Paul and I spent, at least 6 hours at the Magic Kingdom yesterday.
It felt like an eternity, Brad.
It was quite literally hotter than the depths of hell.
Yep.
But if you like our behind-the-scenes videos, this
is going to be a good one.
Yeah, this is it involves princesses.
You ever hear the phrase like, no, whatever the thing is, was harmed in the making of this video? Like in our case, it would be no Surface devices were harmed. And actually,
that's not true.
Yeah,
it's not true. There was an accident. That video barring this little machine will crunch video well, potentially early next week, because I generally actually do most of this stuff on an airplane.
Sure.
Not to tout this thing, but this is the Surface Book with performance base. Hopefully we get a new one soon. This is an older graphics card, but actually it's wonderful for crunching video.
Yeah, better than straight up graphics. Yeah. Integrated graphics.
Yep. Other things we saw today on stage, Paul. You know how much these things excite me, and I'll be curious if you think you know why. But there were 2 Invokes on stage.
Right.
Do you know why they had 2 on stage?
Actually, I was confused by that, although you could see in the overhead view when she asked the question, she said, hey, Cortana. They both lit up, and then one gave way to the other, which is how those assistants are supposed to work, right? If you have a phone and a device and whatever, there's always one in the chain that has precedence.
Yep.
So apparently it works that way, but I'm guessing there's more to it than that.
So I think you might be giving them too much credit.
I see.
I would love to be able to say
I know what you're going to, okay.
Yeah, I would love to be able to say that what you just described is true, that if we have these 2 machines, or I have my phone in this, it will know which one works. I honestly think that there was somebody sitting backstage, and they were hoping that one of the 2 would work, and then they ripped the power from the other one. Because if you go back and look at the demo, it's not like it just kind of did the little animation. Like it just went black.
2 things. People think that I am cynical, and that is crazy cynical. And B, I think one of them actually died in the middle of the demo because it did go dark.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to bash that thing. I'm going to be buying one. I've gone on their website probably once a week for the past 3 months. And you get those little chat things. I keep trying to prod these people. I'm like, hey, when is this thing coming available? And then it sits dark for like 5 minutes. And that person's going like, hey, we got like 1 question about this thing.
No, it's like, we've gotten 131 questions about this. We should ship it. Were they all from the same guy? Oh, yeah.
But I'm waiting for this thing because I have an Echo at home, which I quite like. But it's not, I'm really looking for something, honestly, that integrates with my desktop. And They announced that thing with Amazon, but I'm not quite really sold on it. I don't think I
Well,
want to go to the Google route yet.
you will. We all
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
Um, Actually, I found that term ambient devices to be interesting. I believe
Sure.
it's the first time Microsoft's used it. It's obvious what it means as soon as you hear it. But it made me think of Microsoft's mobile strategy, where they're kind of pushing integration across other platforms. Microsoft's Office apps and so forth
Sure.
are always obviously on iOS and Android. And if this isn't the signal that they're approaching this market in the same way, you
Yeah.
know that well, there's a thing later in the notes about Satya Nadella's book and how he approached the mobile computing stuff, and you don't want to be chasing your competitors' taillights. And it seems like in ambient devices, as we'll call this now, smart speakers or whatever, they're kind of doing that, right?
Yeah.
And that maybe the right approach here is to differentiate and do something a little different, which is, work with the competition.
Yeah. This is one of those things that is, again, an evolving story, mostly because that Invoke has been teased in the market for, we're getting
Yeah.
10 months now?
Yeah, almost a year. Yeah.
Almost a year. So this thing's got to come out. If it doesn't come out when they ship the fall creators update, you know, let the air out of the balloon sound.
Yeah.
That's going to be.
I do want to just call out, by the way, Lee Chen Miller was the woman who did the demo for both the Bing for Business and also for the Cortana Invoke stuff. And she was awesome.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, there's a person that comes out who's just great at this kind of thing. Julia White obviously falls into this category. Panos Panay, for a lot of people, falls into this category. But I just thought she was something special. So
Sure.
She was funny.
Absolutely.
And just innocent and disarming and awesome. And I hope we see a lot more of her.
And she nailed it, because we both know doing things on stage, there's a real fine line being like genuine and tacky.
Sure.
And she was very much like into this demo.
Very natural too.
Yeah.
Like you can't see it, but I'm actually sitting in a pool of pee right now because I'm really nervous. No, but she.
It's gross. Actually.
It's terrible. They're gonna have to burn this seat. But no, I mean, speaking publicly is hard, and she did such a great job. I mean, I just thought that was amazing.
Absolutely. And Paul, well, I don't even know if you want to call these rumors when Microsoft accidentally injects the image into everybody logging into Office 365. But
Yep.
Skype for Business is
the worst kept secret in the history of Office 365.
Yeah.
So we just got a thumbs down here. So I guess the good news is Skype for Business isn't actually going away, right?
Right.
It's going to go to a farm where it will chase rabbits. It's fine. But the technology is still there. I mean, the point is, if Skype for Business as an online service, as we know it today in Office 365, actually continues, right? This is just a branding change. It makes sense that Microsoft should consolidate its communications brands.
Sure.
In fact, Microsoft has carted out the term unified communications again because they're literally unifying their two communications products. And so it's one of those things that it makes sense on numerous levels, but I think the most important thing really is it's not a technological change. I think Teams came out of nowhere this year. And remember when Teams was rumored, and you had a bunch of stuff early on Teams, everyone was saying, just buy the competitor. You don't need to build the thing. It's already out there. Just, spend $8 billion or one Nokia, as we call that now, and just make it happen that way. But this thing has been the most successful new entry in the Office sphere since the beginning of Office 365. They've released a bunch of Office 365 applications of various kinds. This is the first truly big one. There was a moment on stage where Satya Nadella talked about giving away that mindset of the past, where we have to have this giant suite that we deploy down to desktops. It didn't happen at this show, but recently at the Edge Summit that Microsoft had, they talked about how they built Teams from the ground up well, it's not a progressive web app today, but it's a web app at its foundation. It's a new type of app. They do little native things on top of it on every platform. And on Windows 10, it will become a progressive web app. It's a completely new way of doing things. Huge success with users, with customers. And I think, kind of politically, it made sense.
Sure.
To just take the Skype technologies, bring it into Teams. I think Skype, in particular, Skype for Business, had some negative connotations for a lot of people.
A little bit.
I don't know why, but the point is Teams does not, and it's kind of fresh and new, and I guess it just kind of makes sense.
One of the big things that most people don't think about with Teams and why this is so important for Microsoft, this is truly moving beyond email. email is not, it's not a competitive advantage anymore. You can go get an email server and get it set up and all that overnight. You don't need Exchange if you really don't want to use it. But Teams offers that unified solution, more importantly for transitioning of projects, right? If you left the company, I would have to have access to your email and go dig through all that. With Teams, that's no longer the case. And people, that's why a lot of people are moving to Teams, and that's the feedback, at least I'm hearing, saying, hey, look, this is a lifelong product rather than just an intermittent, here's an email with an attachment that, God, I hope you can find it 8 months from now when we're trying to triage why it's not working.
I mean, it's also part of Office 365, which is this incredible suite of offerings that is both things that you install locally on your computer and things that are up in the cloud. And it's just an incredible array of stuff, but you get all the storage per user, you get all the Office applications, obviously, you do get the mail and calendar and all that stuff. But, Teams by itself, it's the value proposition. It's sort of like Office 365 for an individual, whether you're at work or at home, is basically the cost of a storage service. But you get all that other stuff in addition to that. And I think Teams kind of falls into that same category.
Yeah, I know there are some people that are wondering what's going to actually happen if they're using Skype for Business on-prem right now. There is a server coming, I believe, in the second half of next year. So this product is going to be around for a long time, but we absolutely know that Microsoft is going to put its energy and focus into Teams. Yeah. And so if you're wanting cutting-edge features, Teams is where you're going to have to be going forward. We don't quite know what's in Skype for Business Server
I don't
2018.
think Microsoft does either.
I don't think they do either. But
the timing of it suggests that they're not 100% sure even what it is. But clearly what this is an interim measure designed to help those companies that aren't willing to go hybrid or to the cloud fully make this transition, continue forward with what they're using for the phone type solutions. And then I think they're just betting on that phones will just go away and we won't have to worry about this eventually. I mean, I don't see a lot of those capabilities coming to the cloud, but I think it's just an interim thing,
So, Paul, I want to pick your brain for a minute.
Okay.
I know you were deeply, deeply into this, and you could not get any more words out because you were so.
I know what you're going to say.
I was going to say awestruck, but I think dumbstruck is a little bit better of a term. Can you give me your thoughts on quantum computing?
2 words. Corn maze.
Really?
I don't talk about this a lot, but I recently moved. And in Pennsylvania, what I've discovered is there are 2 things. Corn and trains. And I love both of these things. In fact, I've literally stopped the car with my family in it so I could walk to the side of the road and take a picture of corn, which is confusing to everybody. In fact, it's confusing to people who live there because some people have slowed down and just to make sure I wasn't doing something wrong, in case they had the hand on like 9-1, just see what this guy's doing. Why is he taking a picture of the corn? Anyway, quantum computing is complicated, and I probably could never explain it to you because I can't understand it myself.
Well, that's not surprising.
But it's a difficult computer science problem. But I thought the corn maze example was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Actually, you brought it even to a better point. You compared it to Snake.
Yeah. It's just fitting that they killed off Nokia and now they have a quantum computer that can beat Snake.
Yikes. So that might have been why they didn't say Snake. But anyway, you probably saw it. But the point is that you can solve a corn maze computationally by trying each of the available paths, and it's basically a brute force attack. And that works if you have all the time in the world. But the way quantum computing works is basically it uses alien technology to attack all of those paths at once. And I believe the device they use disappears while it's working. It's complicated, like I said. I don't understand it fully.
Yeah, and this was very much an aspirational and inspirational type thing for Microsoft, which is great. It's good to see them pushing the boundaries. This is them doing that again. And so they also came out with what they hope is a programming language for...
What they hope is a programming language?
Well, we'll get to that in a second. But they came out with a programming language that they're going to use for this. And obviously they want it to be like the next C++ or whatever you want to call it. The problem is do any of you actually think that Google is looking at this saying, hey, you know what, we might actually use that? Or Amazon or Facebook or anybody?
Well, but it's Microsoft, right? So this thing is going to be a .NET language. I think it's called Q#, because obviously it is. And this is open, so you can still take advantage of Q# created objects, I'm sure, from other languages and platforms and all that stuff. But yeah, you're right. It's kind of interesting. It looked like C# to me, or a C-type language. It had a weird file extension to it. I don't remember exactly, but it might have been E2E or something like that. It was kind of a weird file extension.
But this will be an interesting thing to watch. This is something Microsoft's going to work on for probably decades to come. The real question is a lot of times we see Microsoft do this inspirational things and aspirational products, but we wait for them to get commercialized. And that's what Microsoft has to get to, and they can't give up. Microsoft has a very rich history of being first, but then just totally missing the boat. And so here we go with Microsoft showing off quantum computing and how they're doing all this great work. They had some extremely well qualified and smart people on stage. And so that's great. But what happens tomorrow?
Well,
right?
what's the end game here, though? I mean, HoloLens is an example of what you're
Sure.
talking about, or augmented reality, mixed reality, that kind of thing. Microsoft is a company that shipped its first laptop in 2017. It's interesting, right? So they're all over the map, obviously,
Right.
but losing out on the client, like I think we're suggesting maybe they are with mixed reality, is not necessarily a big deal. I think quantum computing, AI, machine learning, those things play to Microsoft's strength, and they also play to where Microsoft is going as a company. And I think that this kind of back-end computing horsepower capability stuff is going to be a strength for them. And I don't actually see that going away. I also don't believe there are many companies who can do anything to this scope like Microsoft can. Google maybe. That's about it.
Well, I think the end game is obviously just another tier of Azure.
Yeah, and Azure, right? Azure being a lot like Office 365 in that regard.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. I want to know how Microsoft is using Azure to actually augment this quantum, because they have to be, right? I mean, they've got the most powerful supercomputer probably in the world, if not very close.
You mean the Xbox One X?
Close with what 7 billion transistors they pointed out on stage.
Sure.
But I'll be curious to see how Azure actually plays into the narrative of quantum computing and how Microsoft is using that platform to actually build what is probably quite literally the next generation of computing.
Right.
So, Paul, did you realize that things besides Ignite were happening today?
No, I refuse to acknowledge that. In fact, even if you walk across the street and you can look out on the horizon, you can see stuff that's out there. It's not really there. That's a mirage.
Would you even say it might be a hologram?
It might be a hologram.
We're in the world's largest HoloLens. Actually, some bad news came out today for Microsoft, kind of interestingly timed. So if you use an Apple device right now and you use Siri and it searches the internet, it's actually using Bing on the back end.
Right.
Not anymore. Apple has announced that they are going to be dumping Bing for Google, for Siri web search, results on iOS, and Spotlight on Mac. Yeah,
it's interesting because when Apple moved from Google, it was because they were involved in all the legal issues between Android and iOS. And they've been scaling back the words a lot, and this suggests maybe things are, calming down in a way that they hadn't been for a while. That's very interesting. I don't believe that this is tied to Bing for Business, but it is kind of interesting on the day that we see a new strategy for Bing in a way, that a big chunk of what their search results probably are today is going away. On the client. So, I don't think these things are actually related, but they are in the sense that they're both Bing related.
Yeah, and while we don't know how this actually works out with Apple and iOS and that search, I know with a company like Firefox, right, Google pays them to be the default search engine. I'm curious to see how the business transaction shifted from it being Microsoft to now being Google. Are those companies paying, or what's going on? I'm sure it'll eventually come out. But this is actually a pretty big shift for Apple.
Yep, I agree.
So, Paul, have you done any casual reading lately?
So Satya Nadella is the CEO of Microsoft, but he's also an author now. I'll be impressed when he approaches 30 books like I have. But one book is good. That's good. And I suppose, I'm sure he wrote the whole thing himself. But they gave us a copy of that today in the press room. And so, of course, the first thing I did was open it up to the back. Looked up Windows Phone, found the 3 pages in the book that mentioned Windows Phone just to see what he said. And what he admitted to was something that I thought was a rumor, or that it seemed like it had never really been publicly acknowledged. But before he was CEO, Microsoft acquired Nokia under Steve Ballmer, remember, for, I think it was $7.6 billion. Satya Nadella at that time was on the senior leadership team at Microsoft. And Steve Ballmer asked all of those people on that team if they would kind of thumbs up or thumb down the acquisition. He doesn't say who voted what or what the score was. It'd be kind of interesting. I bet it was pretty close. But he actually does admit that he voted no, and that he didn't think the world needed a third phone ecosystem, and that they were, like I said, chasing after the headlights of the competitors. And so I don't think he set out to undermine Windows Phone, because, of course, he became CEO about 5 months later.
Right.
And then they spent about 2 years trying to make it work. I don't know that there is a strategy that would have worked for Windows Phone, unfortunately. But then he did make the terrible decision to write off the acquisition, and they had to lay off about 18,000 people, basically, which he describes to this day as the thing that bugs him the most about that many people had to be let go as part of it. But I guess the point of all this is just that he really didn't want any part of that, and that the change we've seen under Microsoft, because we talk a lot about digital transformation and all that stuff, I mean, it's actually very real. And part of it was that opening. Remember, one of the very first things he did, I think it was the following February, after he became CEO, was to announce that Office was coming to the iPad first, and then eventually iOS and Android, or iPhone and Android. And that's a big part of their mobile strategy today. I mean, that's the differentiator. This stuff is everywhere that their customers are.
Yeah, and that is Microsoft's mobile strategy. We get asked that all the time. It's like, well, how are they going to get back into mobile? Is the Andromeda Surface Phone it? Well, maybe if they have a Surface Phone that supports quantum computing, but that.
Well, he does. I will say, for people who are looking forward to some other Microsoft mobile something, Andromeda Strain or whatever it's called, he does kind of give a little bit of language there where he says, look, we shouldn't be making a phone specifically, not mobile, but a phone, unless we can differentiate. And in other words, we shouldn't be doing what they're doing. We should be doing something that is a differentiator. And so he uses Continuum as an example of that. He actually uses Office on other mobile devices as an example of that. I'm unclear on that, but I think he does leave the door open to Microsoft doing something in mobile again, but it would be something that's not a kind of a copycat of what you see on iOS or Android.
Yeah, which is going to be tough. And from everything that I've heard, it's going to be a low market. Just again, a hero type device to say they're there, and we will wait and see how that materializes. It's definitely not happening this year. I think we'd be lucky if it happened next year, because at this point they're waiting for timing, right? If you've already burned $10 billion in mobile on hardware,
sure,
it's a really hard pitch to say, hey, let's
come out with a new mobile hardware.
Yeah,
sure.
Yep. Yeah, they basically burned half of LinkedIn on mobile.
Yep.
So that was another big thing. If you guys need professional headshots, we got onto the show floor early. LinkedIn has it all set up. I think that's actually a very smart move for Microsoft. I mean, they've got the perfect setup for a professional-looking headshot. Yeah. That photo you're using today, where your friend is cropped out and there's beer kind of down below you, may not be so great. So go get your headshot taken.
Yep.
Very, very interesting. Anything that they didn't announce today that you're hoping to hear, Paul?
Well, given that I was pre-briefed about everything that we're going to announce, I will say no. I haven't paid attention to some of the stuff since then. I mean, it's been a kind of a busy day. There's been some developer stuff that I want to catch up on. So there's more to learn, and there's going to be more tomorrow too.
There is more tomorrow.
No, not so far.
One of the things I was actually hoping to hear was maybe more some momentum information, maybe Windows 10 users, potentially Office 365 users. We didn't really get any of that, and I don't know if this is just not the event for it, but we haven't really gotten a refresh. Well, the Office 365 comes in the quarterly stuff, but definitely not the active devices.
Yeah, what they I think the last time on that was probably May. And maybe probably at Build was 500 million. So yeah, who knows? Yeah, this Surface will be at an event in London in October.
Yep.
Maybe we'll hear more. And they've been doing Windows 10 Surface events now for a little while. It's possible there'll be more stuff happening, and there might be a more appropriate time for that kind of thing.
Yeah. And so, you got anything else for today, Paul?
No, I just wanted to thank you guys for coming out. A year ago we recorded the very first episode of this podcast here, and I think there were 3 people in the audience. 2 of them were eating lunch because the other place was too busy, and they just needed a place to sit down. And I have to say, it's been a miserable, terrible year working with this jerk, and I just, that's all. No.
Wow.
No, it's been great. I thank you, seriously, for coming today. I really appreciate it.
Wow, you really teed that one up for me, Paul. Is there anything else you got deep down in your heart?
I met Brad's family yesterday, and I got to say, I feel such deep pain for them and what they must go through. The poor little girl, she's so cute, such a good kid,
Yeah, and Paul was just trying to figure out ways to corrupt. He'd like hang a toy in front of her, be like, "You want this?" And then he'd look at me like, "Could she have this?" I'm like,
"Yeah." You guys were like, "You can get this on the way out." And I'm like, "I don't understand. It's right there. Just buy it. It's right there. Why can't she have it now?"
Just a great influence.
It's really easy being an uncle. It's really hard being a parent. That's all I'm saying.
I think your electrician's calling. I'm going to go talk to him real quick. Well, as always, everybody, we very much appreciate you guys coming in.
Oh, hold on. We have a giveaway.
We have a giveaway.
Oh, sorry. You can't leave yet. Unless you're just here eating lunch.
How many am I pulling?
2. Can I see what they look like? We're giving away a hat.
All right.
Looks like your shirt.
Oh, yeah.
You want to pull them?
Oh, jeez. Wait, there's more. The deck is stacked.
Have you ever heard that phrase, you don't want to be unlucky in the applicant pool when you're applying for a job, about the manager who just takes them and throws them away? This is really relevant as Paul just chucked them all on the ground.
Well, you didn't get them all out of the hat.
I was unaware that was my responsibility for you to have eyes.
Okay. Anywho.
All right, you pick a card.
Oh, should I just say who it is? Mike Carruthers. There he is. Come on up, or come on down, as
Come
we
on
say.
down.
Actually,
It's the same logo,
in
Paul.
some ways, this
It's
is.
the
No, look, it's upside down. Oh, I see.
And the other winner is Leo F.
Leo Laporte. Come on down. Leo F. No.
Well, I guess you got to be present to win.
Coming. Okay. All right. Let's
Last call?
Yep.
Nope. All right, you pick another one. Then my winner didn't want to talk to me.
Ricky Isbell.
There we go.
What are these guys sitting next to each other? Over there? Thank you.
Well,
I feel like I should hum it out there, but I don't want to.
Well,
I don't want to hurt anybody.
you have been doing that lately.
Hurting people?
Well, that and throwing things.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I can't confirm this, but I believe it was Paul's fault the escalator broke outside the the convention center. All right, everybody. I'm going to try to do this again here. As always, thanks for coming. This has been almost quite a year. We started in Atlanta. Big deal for us that this is actually still ongoing. And we haven't murdered each other. But we will be back here
I keep trying.
We will be back here tomorrow doing the exact same thing with us again. And we hope to see you here. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.